Welcome to horror heaven. Horror heaven!
Hey guys, Horror Heaven, Jeff Channel back. We just got back from the movie theaters where we went to see Evil Dead Burns. And before we hop into the trailer like we always do, I just want to make something clear. I did two completely different versions of reviews for this movie. There is a spoiler-free one that you can see, which is about 6 minutes long. Nothing is given away in there. If you just want to know if I liked it, if I think it's worth your time, your effort, and your money, go check that one out. I give nothing away. You will not learn anything from that you don't already know. If you've seen the movie and you want to compare your notes to mine, watch this one right here because we're going to do a deep dive. We're going to do a full episode review. We're going to be up around the 20-minute mark. I'm going to show some stuff here. We're going to talk about some specific scenes. It's going to be awesome. But for now, let's get into that trailer.
Kunda. The whole family united.
We can stop them. Evil Dead Burn.
That's beautiful. Cheers.
All right, guys, you just saw the trailer. You know what you're in for. It's an Evil Dead movie, and it is an Evil Dead movie. It definitely delivers what you expect from your Evil Dead movies. There is a lot of action in there. There is a lot of gore in there. There's a good story in there. And there's there's a bunch of really good gross out scenes. And there's a little bit of attempted humor in there. For me, the humor parts fell flat, but other people in the theater were laughing, so what the hell do I know? You're going to notice me looking down a whole lot more than usual because I haven't seen this movie 105 times. I don't know it off the top of my head, so I'm going to have to check to see some of these notes that I made in the movie theater that are written in really bad handwriting. And some of these actors and actresses' names I'm going to butcher, but we'll see how it goes. So anyway, let's get right into the cast, why don't we? So our main character is Alice. Alice is played by Suhelia Yacoub, I believe is how you say that. And she's really good in here. She ends up being our final girl, our badass chick and everything. She has a really good story arc. She doesn't just kind of show up out of nowhere. They talk about her. You see her as a little bit of a victim, kind of turning herself into the hero. And then at the end, she's our one standing tall. She's awesome. Who else do we have in her? We have Hunter Duhan, who plays Joseph. He's probably the best known actor or actress that's in this movie. He was the Hyde character in the first 2 seasons of Wednesday. He's popped up in some other, teeny bopper type things. He's our other kind of main character. You see him on screen a ton. If you like him, this is definitely a movie you're going to want to check out. And then another one we have, let me see if I can get this name right. Errol Shand plays Edgar. He's the patriarch of the family. And whenever he gets infected or possessed, however you want to call, what happens to the people in the Evil Dead movies, that's when all hell breaks loose. He's awesome in this movie. All right, so before we go any further in here, again, if you're watching this, I assume you've already seen the movie, but you might not have, so I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out there anyway. There's definitely some trigger scenes in here, as there are in every Evil Dead movie. The two things that really popped out to me that I think could possibly trigger anybody would be if you are really upset by self-harm, people hurting themselves. There's a lot of that in there, and we're going to talk about it in this review, so you might want to click off, check out all my other stuff. I love you. Please subscribe still, but this one's not for you. And there's a decent amount of animal harm in this movie too, which again, it's part of the story, so we got to talk about it here. We are not going to show anything from either of those things here, but you're at least going to hear me talk about it. So this is just your chance to click off if that's something you want to do. So the movie itself picks up right where Evil Dead Rise left off. I don't know if you remember, but at the end of Evil Dead Rise, we see them driving off to the lake, which was actually at the beginning of Evil Dead Rise, but we didn't know it at the time. So this movie picks up right there at that lake where Evil Dead Rise finished off. Two buddies fishing. The opening scene for this, like the opening scene in Evil Dead Rise, I think was awesome. It was really cool. The guys on screen were really good, bouncing off each other for only having such a small scene together. They were very memorable. There was some oddly gross stuff done to those two poor guys, though. Yeah, we'll cut right here, and then I'm going to get really into the meat and bones of the movie here coming right up. All right, so as far as that movie itself goes, we pick up at the lake, like I said, with these two buddies on a fishing trip. They end up catching a snag when they're fishing, and it's the head of the girl who got the top of her head taken off by the drone in Evil Dead Rise. And it ends up bringing back the possessed girl at the end of Evil Dead Rise. She takes both of them out. Some really, really good gross stuff there. I'm not going to talk about the one part because that's coming up as one of our best ofs, but the one guy, she tips out of the boat, and he's in the boat, and she just looks at him, and she's staring. And in this movie, they do call it Evil Dead Burns. There's a lot of stuff with burning and heat and whatnot in here as torture devices. So she's staring at the lake, and she gets the lake to bubble. It starts bubbling up and boiling. All these dead fish are floating to the surface, and she basically cooks this guy alive. He's swimming, fighting to get to the shore. He gets to shore, but he's done for. She walks by, and she slightly steps on his hand with her foot, and boom, it just peels his skin right off like a boiled chicken. It's a wild scene. It's really good. All right, let me see where else we got here. Okay, so after that, we start seeing this group of friends at a nightclub hanging out, talking. We don't know it yet, but these are all members of the same family. We just believe that they're friends at the beginning. We end up finding out they're members of the same family. Drinking, arguing. One guy leaves drunk off his ass. He hits the possessed girl with his car. She, of course, kills him, burns him alive. Another one burned alive in the car with all the flames and everything. And that's what really sets everything off. From that point on, we go to that guy's funeral. We see the family who's mad at the main character, Alice. The dad seems to kind of blame her for it. The mom, not so much. We're not sure where they stand, but Alice is really nervous to see them. So we're led to believe that they don't really like her. So after the funeral, they all go back to the big, country house where they were from. And everybody's arguing with everybody. The dad, Edgar, thinks he hears the son trying to get out of the casket at the crematorium. And he ends up popping the top of the casket open, and it lets the son out, who's, of course, totally burned up from being burned alive. But he's a deadite now. And boom, he possesses and infects the dad. You see the dad getting worse and worse, but nobody knows what's happening yet. So they get to the house, and they're talking about the family history. And we basically find out that in the original Evil Dead, as you'll remember, Ash, Bruce Campbell's character, finds that tape where the guy's reading. I found this, writing about the Book of the Dead and all that stuff. That guy's voice that's on there that discovered and kind of started this whole thing, we find out is their grandfather. So it's kind of staying in the family, running through the family bloodline. And he mentions in some of his research that he found a weapon that can defeat the Deadites. It knocks the evil right out of them if you use this weapon. They don't know what it looks like or anything. We find out later it's a dagger, but they don't know where the hell it is. And of course, up in the attic, he has tons of daggers there, so they don't know which one is what. All right, and then we see Edgar slowly becoming a Deadite more and more and more at the dinner table. It's a very tense scene. And then basically we realize he's completely gone, not just because he's yelling at everybody, because he kind of already seems like a little bit of an asshole, but he grabs a fork, I think it's either a fork or a knife, and he stabs the family dog like 30 times. He just goes off on the dog, and then he hurts himself a little bit, and yeah, it's not good. He's cutting his own wrist and hurting himself, and they decide they have to take him to get help, so they take him in the car to go get help, and the other members of the family go to bury the family dog. And then when they're in the car, he goes full Deadite. He's attacking everybody. Some of the best parts of the movie happen in there. We're gonna get into that a little bit later. And then they go back to the house. Everyone ends up getting possessed as they're dying, like usual. Everyone's fighting everybody. And it's just Evil Dead mayhem. It's really good. It's really fun stuff. But I'm not going to sit here and rehash the entire movie. Just let's suffice it to say, if you like the Evil Dead movies and you like this franchise and this IP, you're going to like this one. All right, so let's get into some of our best ofs. But before I even talk about the best scene or any of that kind of stuff, I just want to mention some of the gross out scenes. Because none of them were amazing where they're going to be our best of stuff. But there was some gross stuff in there. There's a scene where the one girl gets stabbed with a pen through her ear, and they push it in real slow. And as they're doing it, you can hear the sounds and the stuff in there, and it gets really high pitched and everything to kind of imitate her eardrum popping when you're watching the movie. What else do I have over here? Yeah, there's a scene where one of the deadites pulls the senile grandmother's false teeth out, puts them in her mouth, swishes them around, licks them like all into it, and then puts it back into the grandmother's mouth. Another scene just really gross. And then there's a scene where the one kid's crawling on the ground past this deadite whose face he smashed with I think it was a door, and it's all smashed in like a big curve, and the one guy pushes the dude's face down into all that gunk and is kind of just forcing him to breathe it in and everything. It's really bad. But the grossest scene, the one everyone's probably going to be talking about, is the makeout scene. So Edgar is complete deadite. He's already tried to show that he basically can't die. He shoots himself in the mouth. He shoots himself in the head. He commits suicide about 7 times in this movie. And the one scene's really cool when he puts the gun in his mouth and pulls it. They show it real slow, and you see the light kind of go off in his mouth, and he goes flying back. So his body's all mangled up. His face is chewed up. He's missing this whole half of his face. You can see his teeth and everything. And he grabs the mom, who's still alive, and starts making out with her. He's licking all over her face, and there's blood running out of his mouth into her mouth. You can see her tongue moving around in his mouth, and it's so goddamn gross. But that's the best gross out scene for sure. All right, so talking about some of our best ofs, let's get into our best acting in the movie. The 3 people that I mentioned, all 3 of them were good. The rest of the cast was good too. There was no one in this movie that you would just look at and say they were out of place, they didn't fit, they just didn't hit it. There was none of that. But our best is the guy who plays Edgar. Again, let me check the name here. Errol Shand. He is terrifying when he becomes a deadite. And he doesn't die right away like a lot of the deadites usually become that, and then they get their head cut off or something. He's basically your villain for most of the movie. And he's just awesome. He was cold-hearted prick as a person. You hated him. As a deadite, he's completely terrifying. It was just all good. And he had some of the best practical effects that were applied to his face and stuff from him shooting himself so many times, because there was a lot of CGI in this movie, which I'm not a fan of, but there were some good practical effects in, his fight scenes and that, where he has all that makeup applied, which came off really good. All right, our best scene in the movie. I mentioned a couple of those gross out scenes. The scene that they show you kind of I think it was trailer number 2, where like they made it look like a continuous shot of, everyone's fighting in the background while Alice is crawling on the ground trying to get away. That was a really neat scene too, but like with a lot of stuff, it kind of got ruined because they gave it to you in the trailer. It is what it is. It made me go to the movie. I'm happy I went. But when you kind of know what's coming, it's hard to make that the best scene. The best scene for me is whenever they are trying to take Edgar to the hospital. They don't know what's wrong with Edgar. He just attacked the dog and he's cutting himself. They're not sure what's wrong with him. They have to try to save him. And when he goes full deadite in the car and attacks, it's so awesome. It's an action-packed scene. There's some really unique attacks and ways of fighting and gross out parts. That's the part where you see the girl trying to get out and he slams the door on her finger and she loses all of her fingers. He attacks her with the headrest with the metal sticking out of it and rams that in her mouth, which you see in the other trailer. Like a lot of all that stuff stems from this scene. And we also get to learn something about the Joseph character in this scene, that he's kind of a pussy. He has a gun aimed at Edgar's head. Edgar's about to kill his girlfriend and he doesn't pull the trigger. We don't know why he's so hesitant to kind of step up, but he's really hesitant at that point in the movie. That's definitely the coolest scene. It's probably only about 3.5 minutes, but it feels like about 6 because it's just so action-packed and so filled. I can't wait for that to come out on physical media to rewatch that scene a few times to see what I might have missed. All right, so our best kill in the movie is ironically the first one in the movie. When those guys are fishing that I was talking about in the beginning, the one guy is there kind of by himself and he sees all the fishing rods getting pulled in and everything. He can't figure out what's happening. He's trying to fish back, and boom, it yanks his rod too. And then he turns to go see where his friend's at to try to get some help. And then all these different fish hooks come out of the water with line attached. Their 2 hooks plus obviously multiple other ones, probably 7 or 8. And they all hit this guy. They hook his upper lip, his ear, his nose, his eyelids, or hooked like 3 times on the same eyelid, and he's trying to get away, and boom, they start reeling him in, and it's just a really, really cool gross scene. They pull him in, then you see him fighting in the water trying to get out, and then boom, just a bunch of blood comes up in the water. And it was a really good way to set the tone for this movie, that they're staying with extreme violence and the usual Evil Dead stuff. They're not going to take the foot off the gas, which is pretty cool. But like with any other movie, we got to have a couple negatives, so we're going to give an honest review. We're going to talk about the good and the bad. For me, it was way too long. It was 2 hours and 5 minutes, I think was the runtime. So with the trailers and the BS and everything else, you're probably close to, 2 hours and 15 minutes being in the theater. They can't help the trailers and stuff, so we're not going to hold that against them. But so that movie being about 2 hours and 5 minutes, I'm willing to bet you could cut that movie to an hour and 45 easily, and you would miss nothing. There was some parts that had dialogue and stuff at the funeral that I get they're trying to kind of set the scene for what's going on with the family and everything, but that scene could have been set a lot quicker. I could edit 20 minutes out of this movie very easily, and you wouldn't miss much. And then the other thing I'm really going to kind of go at is the CGI in this movie. It's not so much that I hate CGI. I'm not a fan of it, but it does have its places. And it's not just this movie. I want to say something about all three of the most recent Evil Deads. All three of them, in my opinion, have fallen apart in the last act. They always try to go for some massive, monstrous animal, creature, demon, whatever you want to say at the end. And it always falls flat for me. The Freddy Rodriguez one, when like Satan type looking thing comes up and she chainsaws him, I thought he looked ridiculous. In Evil Dead Rise, that giant ball of all the people that died in the hall chasing after her, again, looked ridiculous. And in this one, at the end, they bring back the main character who kind of burned up in the car and all that. So it's supposed to be her fighting her ex-husband. They're trying to go for that. But honest to God, there was better CGI on Imhotep in The Mummy in 1999. He looked horrible. It really took a lot away from it. I think if they would have just made him look like a deadite who was pretty burned up, it would have been a whole lot more effective than him looking like half a skeleton. There was all burned skin. There was no defining features or nothing. It just really fell apart. I didn't like the way that the CGI was used there on the boss at the end of the movie. Just like with the other two in this most, recent Evil Deads, they swing way too hard trying to hit that home run, and they strike out on all three of them, with my opinion. All right, guys, before we throw out our usual skull rankings, I'm going to ask you to like and subscribe. I'm going to ask you to get some people to like and subscribe. I'm going to ask you to, just spread the word about this channel as much as you can. Please, let's keep it growing. It's going good. Let's keep it rolling. And I'm going to be very interested to see which of these videos does a lot better. First off, this is the first time I'm reviewing a movie fresh. It came out today. And I want to see if more people watch the spoiler full or the spoiler free. I don't know why. I'm just kind of curious to see what happens. And you can see the views on there too, so you can check it out for yourself. So we are going to give Evil Dead Burn from 2026, directed by Sebastian Vanek, 2.5 out of 5 stars. It is right in the middle. It is not great. It is not bad. In my opinion, it is probably the weakest of all of the Evil Dead IP stuff, all the stuff in the franchise, all of that. This is the weakest one. But with that being said, it's still better than a lot of movies out there. Evil Dead is pretty well protected. They don't make an insane amount of movies. They don't make an insane amount of TV shows or anything like that. Everything they make is pretty damn good. This is the quote-unquote worst one, and this is still better than a lot of movies I've seen. So if you haven't seen it yet, you will like it. If you have seen it, hit me down in the comments. Tell me what scene was your favorite. What scene made you gross out? Did you laugh at the stuff that was supposed to be funny? Because I didn't, but a lot of people did. I want to know what you think. Let me know, guys. It's Horror Heaven Jeff. See ya.
Welcome to Horror Heaven. Beautiful pain. Welcome to Horror Heaven.